Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Storytelling Blair, here to give you guys a storytelling review. And this week I'm doing Batman Volume 1, I Am Gotham, written by Tom King and the art is done by David Finch. This is an ongoing series currently right now in the DC Rebirth, so if you guys are remotely interested in this, you can read the second volume, and then you can start going off with the single issues if you're interested. But anyway, enough talking, let's go ahead and get started on this review. Okay, so to get started, the artwork. It's done by David Finch, and it's incredible. It looks like Batman, it feels like Batman, but it's also freeing enough that crazy things can still happen and the whole thing doesn't fall apart. David Finch did a wonderful job with this story, and in my opinion, this is probably my favorite art style for Batman currently. I know this is gonna sound sacrilegious, but I didn't care for Greg Capullo's look. It's unique, and it was cool, and it worked for Batman. But at the end of the day, if you ask me which one am I going to pick, I'm definitely going to pick David Finch. He reminds me of Gary Frank's work with Superman's Secret Origins. Gives that kind of definitive look. It's just, to me, when I see that Batman, I see the Batman the Animated Series. It's just, it looks like Batman and it feels like Batman. And at the end of the day, that's what the art needs to do. So, it's awesome. Now, okay, to jump into the story, the Rebirth Comic. Okay, when DC Rebirth first launched, every single character got a DC Rebirth issue. And in that issue, it was to kind of tell you what had gone on with the character in the past and where they're going to be moving forward. Batman's, though, to this day, nobody knows what it meant. It takes place in a whole week, and I think it's supposed to, show this is Batman's normal week. Nothing ever really changes, except for Duke. And I appreciate that idea, but we can't understand it. It doesn't feed into the rest of the book. It's just there on its own. The only thing that sticks with us is Duke. But, it's just, it feels off. It does not tie in to the Tom King story. It's written by Tom King, it's written by Scott Snyder, and a few other Batman authors, and I don't know what they were trying to do, what kind of story they were trying to tell. It does not feel complete. It's kind of a big deal because, Batman's one of the most iconic characters and nobody can decipher his rebirth issue. Now, when the actual story kicks off, it has a lot of great ideas. The first thing is, in Batman, we're used to him being introduced to a new bad guy who shows up to Gotham, and that's how the story just sort of kicks off. This story plays with a different idea. Batman is introduced to two new superheroes who pledge themselves to Gotham. And it plays with the idea of how does Batman deal with that, What kind of trials does he put them through? And it's pretty awesome, actually. I really like the creativity and the idea that went behind this story. You never really see that. Now, the story as a whole, it's actually really creative, and I think it's a good idea. I think the first two issues are the best ones of this entire story. I think he also poses another good question of, okay, well, how do the people of Gotham feel about Gotham? Are they united? Are they separated? Like, how do they feel? And he answers that question by saying they are together. And I think it's really cool. I mean, you ask, a lot of people ask themselves, why do the people of Gotham stay there? I mean, really, if the city is so bad, if there's so many criminals, why do people stay in Gotham? This kind of plays with the idea that everybody is connected to the city, and that's how it is. That the city rises and it falls just like its people. And instead of running away from the problem, they endure it and they unite. And I think it's a really powerful message for this entire story, and one that plays into Batman very well. There's a great quote in the story from Batman that I think is the definitive way to describe Batman, and that is, everybody's scared, it's okay to be scared, it just gives us an opportunity to be brave. And I think it's a great quote, and it plays into Gotham and Gotham Girl. They stood up, they wanted to become brave, and I think that's cool. That plays into Gotham City, that the people need to become brave and they need to fight off the villains. Hugo Strange, he's one of the villains, and he's trying to break that concept apart. He does a terrible job of it in another story, but I think it's a good idea, and I wish they would have explored that a little bit more. Why Hugo Strange wants to split the city from its people. I don't know. I thought it was a really good idea, and it just falls into some symbolism, especially with Gotham and Gotham Girl, And overall, it sets this story apart from a lot of previous Batman stories, but it gives it some context and kind of goes into the city a little bit more, kind of more world building, and I think it's pretty cool how it's done, but I think it could have been done better. Now, Gotham and Gotham Girl are two new superheroes who are introduced to us. We've never seen them before. They show up, and they're pretty cool, actually. They're inspired by Batman. And he believes, okay, yeah, I was scared for a moment, now I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to step up to the challenge. Taking Bruce's quote literal, which I think is really cool, that some people will be inspired by Batman to become better. And it kind of creates this idea that, yeah, Batman is a superhero. He's not just some vigilante who beats the shit and breaks people's backs and kills people with his Batmobile. But I think Gotham and Gotham Girl are cool because they symbolize the city in a lot of ways. They are inspired by Batman. They want to do what Batman does, but then they are struck with heartbreak from the city, and they have to deal with it. The problem is the conflict is dealing with it in a positive way rather than a negative way, turning into a hero and not a villain. And that's something that not a lot of people in Gotham can do, aside from Batman and some of his friends. It's a very tough battle, and I think they should have focused on that just a little bit more. Maybe another issue or something. I thought it was great symbolism to introduce two heroes, Gotham, Gotham Girl, and let them play in the city and show how people can be inspired by Batman. So, I don't know. I like the idea of Gotham and Gotham Girl, and I think there was a lot there, but I don't think Tom King fully explored what it could have been, because it's a really cool idea. How does Batman inspire the city? And in this story, out of any, I really see Batman as a hero. Now, we're introduced to the villains, which is Hugo Strange, Psycho Pirate, and Amanda Waller with General Lane. So there's just three of them. And there's no introduction to them. There's no real introduction. They're sitting around a table, they're all conversing for a second. They introduce you to Psycho Pirate. But that's it. If you didn't know who Psycho Pirate was, you would be very confused in this story. You don't understand his power, which his power is to control emotions. He wants you to feel sad, you will feel sad. And that's how it works. Hugo Strange, if you don't know much about him, well, he just kind of shows up and he lets loose Psycho Pirate. And then Amanda Waller, she sets up this huge grandiose plan to save Gotham from Batman, but then it falls flat. I feel like her story is going to play into the Suicide Squad versus Justice League event. So I'm going to have to wait and see on that. But as far as this story goes, she comes in and she leaves. And it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And then again, with Hugo Strange, he shows up, he stirs up some problems, he leaves. And the same with Psycho Pirate. And the worst part is, Batman has to deal with all three of those villains in three different stories that are not this story. And I think that's a huge problem. I mean, yeah, they didn't have to resolve the issue in this one book. I know it's an ongoing series, but there should have been a little bit more context in this story of why they're doing what they're doing. Another thing I like about this book and the writing was there was actually some humor. There was some humor in a Batman book, and it wasn't forced. It wasn't some campy Batman humor that just kind of came out of nowhere. It was actually really clever. I'll only spoil one of them, and it's really where Bruce says he doesn't trust Alfred. And Alfred's sitting there looking at Duke, and he's like, yeah, you're right. At 11 years old, Bruce asked me for Christmas to get him a katana. And I got him a wooden sword because I thought it'd be more fitting for a boy who's 7 years old. And ever since then, he's never trusted me. That's funny. I like the humor that this story introduced. And honestly, Alfred's really cool. He's not really a father figure like he was in the Scott Snyder story. But he's got his he's kind of poking fun at Batman here and there, and kind of giving us a laugh. And I think it's greatly needed. I do wish he was a little bit more father figure. That's just how I see Alfred. I see Alfred as Batman's dad, ultimately. He is the one who raised him. He wasn't just some butler who took care of him because he had to. He took him under his wing, and that's why Bruce is the way he is. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So again, some of my major problems with the story is, one, there's no clear message for the villains of what they're doing. They just kind of show up, wreak havoc, and leave. And to me, that's a problem. You got to understand the villains. You got to know what they're doing, even if you haven't read anything before. You can't just leave people to just you have to understand who Hugo Strange is because of Arkham City. You have to know Amanda Waller because of Suicide Squad movie. And Psycho Pirate, good luck. You're probably going to have to read Crisis on Infinite Earths or something to understand who he is. And that to me is that's No, you gotta establish those characters for people. You really do. At the time, I didn't know who Psycho Pirate was. Luckily, I was actually reading Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's how I figured out who he was and why he was important. But that story should have established him. So to me, that's a big problem, is that they don't really give you any clear context. Another problem, and I know this is obvious, it feels like an ongoing series. It wasn't like Wonder Woman Year 1, where it had an ending, and that you could have just stopped right there. If you wanted to read more, you could. This story, not so much. Like I said, it poses 3 villains, and guess what? You're gonna have to read 3 different books to understand what happened to those 3 different villains. And some of them are not even Batman books, and one of them is terrible. Oh, we'll get to that another time. Like, come on, you know? Like, give me something a little bit more here. I like the ideas that this book was posing, but it didn't really deliver on anything, and to me that was a huge problem with it. Now, the plot in some cases is just way too convenient. Way too convenient. There happens to be 27 bodies in a burning building, and they're all task force people or whatever. Batman tells Duke. Duke's like, oh, 27. Oh, the 27th letter in the alphabet is X. Therefore, it has to be Task Force X. Really? That's not being a detective. That's just making shit up out of thin air. I can do that too. Maybe it was Zatanna, because, you know, Psycho Pirate was there, and they both have something to do with magic. Oh, everyone's going crazy. That means Joker had to have been there. Maybe Scarecrow was there, because Gotham Girl was scared. So that must mean Scarecrow had to have been there. Anybody can do that. Come on, show some effort. I'm like, really? Really? This could have been really effective. I see what you're going for, but you needed another issue to explain this, or slow down, or get rid of that Rebirth issue and use that slot, because it was straight up silly. Okay guys, having said everything, this story was really cool. It was a nice return to Batman. It wasn't too powerful, but at the same time, it shouldn't really fall under the radar. If you're looking for a current Batman story to read, and it's an ongoing one, so it's gonna last for a while throughout Rebirth, I think this one's a cool pickup. You know, if there's a buy 2 get 1 free deal going on, maybe this should be one of them. Because it's pretty cool. I like the idea that it presents, but I don't think it takes enough risks, or it doesn't commit to what it's trying to say. And a lot of things feel rushed in this story. Again, it feels like you're gonna have to pick up the next issue, and it's just, I don't like that. I like it when you can read one book and you're just like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll pick up the next 2, number 2 and 3. But if you pick up book 1, and it's not a self-contained story that could go on, it's just, I don't know, it's just a problem for me. So that's why, guys, I'm gonna rate Batman I Am Gotham a 7 out of 10. It's a pretty decent book. One that you should check out if you're a Batman fan, and if you're interested in everything that's going on. It leads into some events a little bit later, like the return of Bane, and a romance with Catwoman, so, you know, this is where you can start. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you guys could give me a like, subscribe, check out my next video, that'd be cool too. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great one. See ya!